In the summer of 2017, I played my US debut piano recital in Mays Landing, New Jersey. My program had selected pieces by European composers such as Mozart, Schumann, Schubert, Beethoven, but also classical piano music by Nigerian composers, particularly Christian Onyeji. My choice of repertoire was very deliberate because I wanted to begin with the sort of piano music that people knew and then introduce new piano music. Now, after the concert, during the reception, I had some post-concert conversations, and people talked a lot about the new music I played, and they asked a lot of questions. What was that? Was that jazz? It sounded a little bit jazzy. And I told them, oh, it was African pianism. I said, African pianism, what does that mean? The best answer I could give at the time was, it's like African classical piano music. And they said, oh, African pianism. So since then, I've been thinking about African pianism and what it means, and particularly what it means to be performed right here in the United States. So what exactly is African pianism? Some scholars have written about the twin forces of colonization and missionization on the African continent. So when the colonial administrators were setting up their structures, missionaries were also missionizing, setting up schools and churches. They were teaching European models and music and bringing in musical instruments from Europe. Now, some people who were trained in that tradition at some point began to bring in musical elements from their environments, the melodies, the rhythmic patterns, the sort of harmony structures that they will find in their music, in their towns and villages, into their own music and composition. So it became a sort of blend. Now, that has become what we call African art music. Now, if African art music is like a tree, African pianism is one of the branches, and we know that a branch has leaves. So African pianism is like a blend. It's a blend of African traditional and popular music idioms with Western European classical paradigms. Now, the Nigerian composer and scholar Akin Yuba coined this term in the 1970s. Before then, in the 1960s, he had been composing music following this tradition. And even before then, his teacher, the Ghanaian scholar J.H. Kwabena Nketia, was also composing in this tradition. So what they would do, they would go into the towns and villages, record music, do some field work, what they called creative ethnomusicology, or what Christian Onyeji would call research composition. They record this music and use elements from the actual music of the people to compose music for piano. So what happens is that the piano begins to speak an African musical language. The piano becomes indigenized, the sort of localization of the instrument, so that it becomes both a European instrument and an African instrument. And in that sort of localization, what you have is a sort of exploration of the rhythmic and percussive qualities of the piano, what the scholar Christian Onyeji will call drumming the piano. But it goes beyond just the percussive qualities of the piano. The piano is also used in this tradition for the sort of melodic purposes, the sort of melodies that you hear in many African cultures. The Nigerian composer Ayo Bankole, in the opening piece, the opening of one of his pieces called A Gun Variation, he has this beautiful melody. Da 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 da. Just a simple melody, but this melody is culturally linked to Yoruba folklore and spirituality, and Yoruba is found in southwestern Nigeria. So that when you play this music on the piano, you're not just playing any melody, but melody that carries a sort of cultural significance. And Akin Yuba, the same scholar, in 1963, composed this piece, Again Lasso, where he wrote music for drums, 4 drums and piano, 4 Yoruba drums and the piano. So in that instance, you will see the composition. The composition, you have on the score, 4 drums, and then the piano is here, and then you have the 4 drums. So this work explores the tonal and percussive qualities of the piano. In this composition, the piano becomes a drum as well, playing alongside other 4 Yoruba drums. So this is the sort of thing that happens in this music, where the piano is localized to become something else, to become another traditional instrument. And what Akin Yuba was trying to do was to say that his theory and framework, that African traditional instruments that have melodic and percussive qualities, such as the xylophones, the thumb pianos, and drums and other instruments, that since the piano has that sort of quality, then the piano can be used to express that kind of music. In 1999, Akin Yuba, who until his passing was a distinguished professor of ethnomusicology at the University of Pittsburgh, hosted a conference on African pianism, inviting scholars from all over the world who came, gave papers and presentations on African pianism, performed the music, and at the end of the conference, some years later, in 2005, they published 2 volumes, one on the essays on African pianism, and the other were collected compositions on African pianism. Now, before then, there were pockets of performances here and there in the United States, but that conference was a sort of official launching and celebration of African pianism in the United States. So what is my argument? My main argument is that listening to African pianism in the United States and the performance of African pianism in the United States is produced by the politics of space. And in listening in this sense is live listening in concert as opposed to virtual people who are listening online. So my idea of listening, I have 2 ideas of listening. The first one is the sort of structural institutional listening, directly linked to the politics of space, issues of agency, access, publishing, special locations for these performances. And all of these link now directly to live audiences, people who now sit in these spaces to hear the music, people who get to learn the music through master classes and all other important media that they get to access. So the space for this music in the United States are created sometimes by institutions such as the Oxford University Press, OUP, that published edited volumes on piano music of Africa and the diaspora, containing lots of works on African pianism, and MSR Classics, the recording labels that release music on African pianism. There are also individuals who try to play this music, like William Chapman Yaho, who performed the music across the United States, master classes, giving workshops, training people across the United States. And then you have the actual people who are listening and learning this music. You have people from middle school to high school, and even in colleges. Just last February, I led an African pianism seminar, this performance seminar at New England Conservatory, teaching African pianism and performing the music so that it's accessible to people across all ages right here in the United States. There are also other individuals who are trying to create their own platforms in order to promote this music. For instance, Fred Onoresoke, a composer based in St. Louis, Missouri, who founded St. Louis African Chorus in the 1994, and then began to promote and publish this music and began to record this music as well. So as I conclude, I ask, why is it important? Why should we care? African pianism is important because it involves the relocation of culture, bringing in new cultures in the United States, and also promoting the sort of diverse repertoire and sound world that we hear in classical music, making concert more interesting. So maybe like some of my audiences in 2017 in Mays Landing, New Jersey, who heard Mozart and other pieces and they were more interested in music by the Nigerian composer, maybe it's important to start including and bringing this music in the classical piano music canon. So in 2026 and beyond, as you get a chance to get involved or hear African pianism live in concert or learn any African pianism piece, you're doing a very important work in the propagation of a diverse and richer classical music. Thank you.